Welcome. Thank you for being here. I know we have a little bit of a sparse crowd, but the weather is probably a little scary at the moment, so we're just gonna roll with it. I have a presentation that we're going to give with some of our other campaign members, and then we're going to do a Q&A, and we also have our petition and some different ways to get involved with our effort. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. My name is Riley. If you got an email, it was likely from me. I am the Northern Colorado coordinator. I'm a staff member with 350, and I also lead our campaign. The Divest CSU campaign is a subset of 350 Northern Colorado, so all of those emails are also from me. A little bit about who we are. Divest CSU is a coalition of students, faculty, staff, and community members who all want to hold CSU accountable. So what we work on is divesting CSU's endowment, which is the whole chunk of money that the university is like, wow, we have lots and lots of money. And a lot of that is invested in the fossil fuel industry. So that is specifically what we're working on addressing. Our campaign is modeled after, hi, come on in. Oh no, you're fine. After the Divest Harvard campaign, which was successful, and there are multiple different campaigns around the country targeting universities for divestment. I wanted to highlight this CSU mission statement. It says Colorado State University is committed to excellence, setting the standard for public research universities and teaching, research, service, and extension for the benefit of the citizens of Colorado, the United States, and the world. So this is really the standard that CSU pushes out to the community. And this is something that we heavily refer to when we talk about why divestment is important, specifically relating to CSU. Great. So why divest? Divesting from fossil fuels we view as a moral obligation. So we're looking at an existential crisis that is climate change in the next 10, 15 years. So for my generation, that is really scary. It's in our lifetime. We are calling on CSU to denounce the fossil fuel industry's responsibility for the climate crisis. Divestment also works to break the hold that the fossil fuel industry has on our economy and our institutions. It's really about putting your mouth or your money where your mouth is. So we want to hold CSU accountable in all of these ways. Come on up. Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, all. I'm Jenna Parker. I'm a postdoc, and I went to graduate school at CSU. So I'm an alumnus, and I'm also working on this campaign. And I want to talk about universities that have already divested. So just for some historical context, students began asking for divestment back in the 1970s and 1980s with respect to apartheid. They were trying to get their universities to divest from sources that funded apartheid. And around the world now, not just universities, but divestment overall has taken away an estimated $40.51 trillion from the fossil fuel industry, which is pretty awesome. And there are about 1,557 institutions that have divested, and greater than 100 of these in the US are universities. So this is more than possible to divest. And kind of interestingly, the largest piece of the pie is actually faith-based institutions. They make up about 35.2% of divestors. And then educational institutions follow that at about 15.7%. And you can see some universities listed, notable universities who have divested, and these include Boston, Brown, California State Systems, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Lewis and Clark, Princeton, Stanford, Yale, and there are many others. You can go to websites and find a whole list of universities that have divested, but we're not asking Colorado State to do something that has not been done by any means. And there's a lot of struggle to get to diversity in many cases. So I really like the story of Harvard. So way back in 2014, students actually sued the university for not divesting from fossil fuels. And they only just divested last year in 2021. And a really cool story of leading up to the divestment, students actually at the Harvard-Yale football game, 3 minutes before halftime ended, dozens of students actually stormed onto the field and sat with banners, and hundreds of people from the crowd joined them, and they actually delayed the football game for half an hour. Police had to come and forcibly remove about 42 people before they could get the game going again. And even after that, Harvard was still very resistant and basically doubled down that it helps climate change in other ways like research, education, community engagement, but it wasn't going to divest. But after the fight, they finally divested in 2021. So it can take some work, but eventually these universities have gotten there. And even in Colorado, there are other divestment initiatives going on. So there's a campaign at CU Boulder, and they're asking the university to divest from fossil fuels and reinvest in green energy by 2027. After Thanksgiving, there was a march of about 300 students just this last year in 2022, and faculty demanding divestment from fossil fuels, and they have a very active petition going on. They still haven't received any real meaningful response from the university, even though UC Boulder also prides itself on a theme of sustainability and climate change. But it's hard to claim you care about climate change while investing hundreds of millions of dollars in fossil fuels. And then the Colorado College has a divestment coalition. And last Thursday, they actually got some exciting news that a subcommittee was formed to explore a route for Colorado college's divestment from the carbon industry. So that's some great news. And they've also had some level of campaign for over 10 years. So it can be a long road, but hopefully getting shorter as divestment becomes more common. There's also Fossil Free UC Colorado Springs and Divest Denver University. And they also highlight their university's mission to be dedicated to the public good, for example, and they really want to hold their universities accountable. So we are not alone in this fight. And then there's a big report that came out from the Colorado Fiscal Institute, because you'll hear a lot of people saying, well, oil and gas is a huge part of Colorado's economy. We can't move away from it. But they actually, and I'll read this word for word because it's quite important. The report found that oil and gas development, while creating some economic benefits, also carries significant costs. While some communities will have a harder time than others during the transition from pollution-causing fuels to clean energy, this analysis shows it is entirely feasible for Colorado to diversify its economy, move away from oil and gas development, and come together to support the specific towns and counties that will be in most need of support. So some more specifics from this report, they found that the oil and gas industry, along with pipeline construction and transportation industries, makes up just 1.8% of total wages and less than 1% of total employment in Colorado. So while we do need a just transition for these oil and gas workers, there aren't as many as oil and gas companies would like you to believe that there are. And while there is tax revenue generated from oil and gas companies, most of this tax goes into cleaning up pollution and paying for losses caused by oil and gas development. There are also significant health, environmental, and other costs that oil and gas bring. So for example, there were about $13 billion in damages based on pollution over a 10-year period. So there's a big social cost associated with oil and gas, and the volatile organic compounds and nitrous oxides released also lead to dozens of deaths in Colorado each year. And then there are other costs, such as property is valued lower, there's habitat fragmentation, greater water usage. They also have to pay to clean and plug up wells. So, and a lot of this is paid for by communities as opposed to the industry. And then finally, oil and gas also contributes to global warming, which is causing billions of dollars of damages to Colorado, and harms the ag and recreation industries. And climate-caused disasters have cost about $20 to $50 billion for Colorado since 1980. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense for a university in Colorado to continue investing in oil and gas. And another point here is that the PARA Institute, which is Colorado's teacher pension fund, there's also a campaign going on asking them to divest, and 350 is very involved in that. And arguments for this is that other pension funds are moving to divest, including the largest state pension fund in the US in New York City. And so there are greater than 140 pension funds globally that have divested. And the UN Secretary General actually advises pension funds to divest from fossil fuels. And currently, PARA has greater than $1.5 billion invested in over 300 oil, gas, and coal companies. So hopefully they will divest soon as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be talking a little bit more about our campaign itself and our demands. Like any other campaign, we have specific metrics that we want the university to meet us on. And for our specific campaign, we have 4. And I'm going to go into each one in some detail. Our first demand is to disclose. I don't know if anyone has ever tried to navigate the CSU endowment website, but it is a headache and a half. There is little to no information about where CSU invests, where they get their money from. And there's a lot of back-end digging that you have to do to be able to find anything substantial. So that leads us to our first demand, which is disclose. We want CSU to publicly announce what their investments look like, how much money is invested in those, and where they're getting their money from. And as a public institution, this is not a very heavy lift. A lot of other public institutions do this exact same thing. And as students, I am a student, I'm a senior, I would really like to know where my university gets its money. And that is a perspective I have heard from community members, alumni, faculty, staff, all of those individuals. That leads me to our second demand, which is divest. So this is really the cornerstone of our campaign. We view divestment as ceasing any additional renewals in fossil fuel investments. So say an investment is up in 2025, not renewing that investment and instead putting that money into renewables or other sustainable and equitable and just funds. This also looks like taking money out of current investments. So this could be, say you're invested in BlackRock, which is a very well-known, very morally not great investment. And divestment in that case would be pulling money from BlackRock. So we take both approaches, and those are 2 things that we hope to see the university do. Now, beyond divestment, we're looking at 2 other demands. Our third demand is reinvestment. So when we were going through this campaign, we were asking, okay, so you took this money out of the fossil fuel industry, where is it going to go next? And that's where renewable and sustainable and just alternatives come in. So that represents our third demand, which is reinvestment. We want CSU to be able to take that money and put it into things that are going to benefit the community, that are going to continue to be equitable and profitable into the future, like renewable energy. And our fourth demand, CSU paints itself as a sustainable institution that really, really cares about the community and being environmentally conscious. So we want to ask CSU to continue to take a stand to be sustainable, to stand up for the community, and advocate for things outside of just environmental sustainability. So if that looks like equality, equity, all of those things. Our goal is to capitalize on CSU's socioeconomic and political power in the city of Fort Collins and be able to utilize that to make our community a better place. I mentioned CSU's endowment, so I'm going to go a little bit into what that looks like as far as we know. So like this says here, the exact dollar amount invested in the fossil fuel industry is not publicly disclosed. So all of the information we have is been synthesized by our wonderful volunteers with what we can't find. So of what we know, CSU has over $10 million invested in the fossil fuel industry, and we only have access to about 23% of CSU's endowment. So the rest of that endowment is unknown. So in the 23%, there's $10 million. The other 77%, we have no idea how much is invested in fossil fuels, which is really concerning. That's obviously the majority of the endowment that we have no idea where it is or where it's going. And this is where the gray area comes in, and that's why we have our first demand. I am going to pass it off to Barb, who's one of our wonderful volunteers and campaign members, to talk about some of the work we're doing on the alumni side. I'm going to have you come stand here so the folks on Zoom can hear you.
Sounds good. Okay. Hi, my name is Barb. I'm also an alumnus of CSU. I got my master's degree in 1991, so it was a long time ago. So the piece that we all have been working on, but me as well, I'm going to start out talking about the faculty piece, that we have made contact with a handful of faculty members. We still have a long way to go with getting many more, but we currently have support from the SOGES folks, which you probably know is the School of Global Environmental Sustainability. Diana Wall and Peter Backlund are in support. Stephanie Malin and Emily Fisher, who are also both professors, have given us their support for our divestment campaign. We have contacted other faculty through email who have maybe not responded, but we have a ways to go yet on that. So as far as alumni goes, I got in touch with folks who publish the alumni publications. There's an online publication around the Oval, that's the paper publication, which comes out quarterly, and Around the Oval comes out every month online. So I spoke with them about doing an article for us, talking about CSU alumni who are climate activists, and possibly mentioning our campaign as well. They told me that they would not do that because they can't take a divided political stance. I pointed out to them that climate change is not really a partisan issue, that wildfires and floods and droughts don't care how you vote, and that, climate change is going to impact everybody. But that did not really make much difference to them. So we're still working on the alumni approach. I'm contacting some notable alumni to see if somebody will be willing to, come forward and publicly support our campaign. CSU in some ways is pretty conservative, and the way the foundation manages the money is one of those ways. So, we didn't expect that we would say to them, we would like you to divest, and they'd say, wow, great idea. We think we're going to have to show that there are a lot of students and folks in the community and alumni who are in support and understand that this is a good and necessary thing to do. So I have one of my favorite quotes here. You're probably familiar with Howard Zinn, who is the author of The People's History of the United States, among other books. And his autobiography is entitled, You Can't Be Neutral on a Moving Train. So
what a quote.
Things are going in a certain direction that is a bad direction, and you don't do anything about it, you're sort of going along with it. And so for the Alumni Association or other folks to say, we can't talk about this because we need to be neutral, well, they're not really being neutral. They're supporting fossil fuel investment if they won't even publish an article that says, there's a campaign going on for divestment. So that's where we're at with that. And if any of you know folks who are alumni, your parents, your aunts and uncles, your siblings, tell them about our campaign, and give them our website, and we'd love to have more alumni. So Lots of us are.
Thanks, Barb.
You bet.
Yeah, so that offers a little bit of context on what we're doing on the alumni side. And unfortunately, there have been a couple dead ends, but luckily we have Barb, who's fearless and fierce in that effort. Some stuff on the student side that I have been working on is our collaboration with AFCSU. So as students, this is the Associated Students of CSU. I always like to refer to it as people who like to play government. So they do actually have quite a bit of pull on campus, which is really exciting. Earlier, oh wow, that was not this month. Last semester, we had the opportunity to present at a Senate meeting, present the campaign, and are now working on a resolution to get the Senate to endorse divestment as an option. So this has been really exciting because, as I mentioned, AFCSU has a lot of pull on campus. They have a lot of really impactful connections with admin, with faculty, and with the foundation. So I have been working directly with the Environmental Affairs Office at AFCSU to get a resolution passed. That is in progress, but the end goal being that AFCSU Senate endorses our campaign. And this endorsement is notable just because it will be instrumental in reaching CSU's administration. So we have been actively working on this front, and it's something that I personally work on, just like Barb takes on alumni engagement. I do more of the student stuff because I am a student. So yeah, that's kind of our outreach effort in a nutshell. I'm gonna go a little bit further. Oh no. Oh goodness. Okay. Okay. One moment, please. Participants. Oh. Okay. Cool. I think that's working now. Great. Well, I'm going to continue talking about divestment. At least for me, divestment wasn't something that I learned about in class. It was something that I did all of my learning about outside of class. So when I talk about divestment, I like to give a lot of background, and folks, especially with financial backgrounds, have a lot of questions. So the whole purpose of this slide is to kind of answer those questions. I did mention this about phasing out fossil fuel investments. So instead of renewing an investment, you place that money into an equitable and renewable alternative. And then the other element of divestment is a direct sale of assets. So that's the technical term from immediately moving money from a not cool fund. And this is physically removing money from fossil fuels and moving it to other funds. So like I mentioned previously, we asked CSU to do both. These are both things that are not only effective, but are also feasible given other campaigns like Harvard that were successful. Some next steps that we have happening now. We are actively reaching out and collaborating with CSU faculty and staff. We're continuing alumni outreach. We have our petition going right now. So our goal is to hit 1,000 signatures by spring break. I want to say we're at 378, thank you. And have been steadily growing since launching the petition, which is exciting. One of the biggest things I've been focusing on is engaging undergrad students because it really is about student voice. If we can go to the foundation and say, hey, this is what students want. We want to hold CSU accountable. We want to see CSU set a precedent in our community. They're more likely to listen, especially since we pay lots and lots of money to the university. So as much as it feels like we're shouting into a black hole, they ultimately do have to listen to the students. And the more voices we have, the more likely that is to happen. The last thing that we are actively working on is getting in touch with decision makers. So part of this campaign is getting people into the places where decisions are made. And this is the difficult part because the foundation and individuals of that same realm tend to be very fiscally minded. So coming as a climate activist and saying, hey, this is really bad for the environment, and having the rebuttal that, oh, this is really good for our pockets, we are working on finding that balance, and that's something that we continue to navigate. Super fun. Now you're probably like, okay, great. This is a whole lot of information. Now what do I do with this? We have weekly planning meetings. So most of the time it is the four of us, Sam, Jenna, Barb, and I, who come to these meetings. We strategize around what we're going to do next, what we want our campaign to look like. In the case of this event, we plan our symposium, all of those types of things. And this is really where all of those decisions around what we want to do and how we want to operate happen. If another meeting isn't really your style, we also have a petition that's active right now that I mentioned. We're looking for signatures. I believe we have a QR code circulating. We would love everyone's signature on that. If you want CSU to divest, I hope you do, you're in this room. And that is a great way to help our effort, share with your friends, share with your family, community members, whatever that may look like. And our website, divestcsu.org, is also active, which you can find on that QR code. So we have some information on that website. It's very similar to what I presented. There's also a contact link if you're interested in getting involved. But I'm gonna pass it off to Q&A.